Good day. My name is Shimon Lawton and I work for MANCOSA's School of Education. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed our reality. The spread of the virus, mainly through droplets from the mouth and nose, forces us to change our social interactions, including those of teaching and learning. Due to the socio-economic inequalities in the South African context, quintile 1 to 3 schools do not have the necessary resources to switch to high-tech remote teaching and learning. Over and above this limitation is the capacity and the readiness of some teachers, as technology skills were always seen as a tool for the ICT classroom. But COVID-19 has thrust all educators into this uncharted territory as we look at how to effectively teach and learn remotely. This webinar series will focus on building and fine-tuning tech skills of educators throughout the South African context, from those with none or limited tech skills to those looking to refine their ability to teach remotely. We at MANCOSA's School of Education believe that the challenge brought about by COVID-19 pandemic should not result in children from deprived environments being left behind. It is with this in mind that we have gathered together professionals to equip and train our teachers to serve our communities meaningfully during this time. The MANCOSA SOE is proud to be a partner in this essential initiative to equip our educators and enable them to adapt to this changing environment.
Today we start a series of webinars on teaching and learning remotely. In this phase, we'll be focusing on doing so economically. We have with us Nicole Hines. Nicole Hines has studied at CPUT in South Africa. She since moved to Dubai, the UAE. Nicole is a senior teacher who's developed proficiency in many tech skills to enhance teaching and learning both in the classroom and remotely. She is currently conducting successful and stimulating teaching during this global pandemic. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Shimon. It's good to be here.
So how have you found this topic of audio and video etiquette during this time of the global pandemic? Have you found teaching remotely effective?
Well, one of the most important jobs of being a teacher is to develop healthy relationships with your students. And although it's not the same, being able to communicate and still teach them online has helped maintain these relationships. There are so many resources out there that teachers have created that you could be using. However, creating your own lessons and communicating with the students online gives it that personal touch and is also vital for their development and progress. It also gives them a sense of stability in this very unknown period of time that we're going through. Most of us have access to phones with recording options, and creating videos and messages and voice notes is the perfect way to start the online teaching process. Obviously, you would need to be very organized and do a little bit of research in order to start this process.
So, Nicole, you've obviously taught in South Africa and you've also taught overseas as well. And you know the South African context is one that is obviously an area where we would look at teaching and remotely in an economical way. I think that's where our challenge is currently. What are some of the tips that you can provide our teachers, mainly looking at the video and audio etiquette of how do we go about actually taping the sessions or doing audio to send to our students?
Right, yeah, so like I mentioned, starting with videos, could be a short video is the best place to start, but you would need to have yourself sorted out. The best thing to do first is to create your workspace. This cannot be on your couch or in your bed. I know it's very tempting working from home, but you still need to stay professional. Make sure that your area is well lit. I would suggest placing yourself in front of a window so you can get a lot of natural lighting, but be aware of direct sunlight as it will brighten your face and you might fade into the background. Avoid inappropriate decor. We know students are very curious beings, so try to stick to something neutral in the back without any personal pictures or personal information. Another suggestion I have is to face your screen away from entrances. Working from home, we have our spouses, we have our kids, and we even have pets running around the house. And if you're facing away from an entrance, if someone happens to walk past, it will not be caught on camera.
I've been watching a few videos online, and as you know, there are many of these such instances. So how would you advise somebody who's obviously maybe having kids at home, they're working remotely, what advice would you give them?
You know, being a teacher in any situation, but even more so working from home, is you need to be prepared and you need to plan around your household. So, you know, when your children go to sleep, best is to do your videos when your kids are maybe sleeping or when you know that your household is going to be a lot quieter. If you have a space where you can block off areas where it will be a lot quieter or you won't be getting any interruptions, that would be ideal. But otherwise, work around your family schedule as well.
I think it's also important to note that even if you don't do a video, I think, and you're doing audio as well, you would also need to create a space to work in. What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. You know, it is important to be able to separate your personal life with your work life as well. And if it's all mixed in together, it becomes very difficult to be able to separate yourself from what needs to be done in your work life and being able to make time for your kids and your family. So having a separate workspace is very, very important, as well as keeping it organized.
Thank you.
Another point would be get properly dressed. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people who have been doing online teaching for a while, and it is really difficult to be working from home and be able to keep that professionalism, but it's important that you look presentable for your students on your video. You can't be coming onto the screen in your pajamas. I don't do it, and I also you know, obviously I'm a little bit further into the online process. So even my meetings with my students, I also ask them to, you know, not be wearing their pajamas either, just so that we can keep the whole, this is our classroom together and keep that whole dynamic where we're teacher and students. Try and avoid bright stripes and checkered clothing. Just like I mentioned, where the direct sunlight will make you fade in the background and also mix up with the video. The same goes for bright stripes or checkered clothing. It can also be very distracting to the eye as well.
I totally agree with this, that clothing does play a vital role. I mean, when you look at yourself as a teacher, even standing in front of the class, you have to be mindful of what you wear. And so I think if you're going to do video as well, that is something that you have to focus on. As you're saying, wear the plain colors, wear something that's not going to distract or move away from what you are saying. Because obviously when we're looking at video, what you are saying is most important, not necessarily the background or what you're wearing.
Yeah, I agree completely, Shimon. Remember, your image says a lot about who you are, and you want to create a stable environment for your students. If you are showing up for your videos and your hair is a mess, you look like you've just woken up, but this is the kind of message you're going to be sending to your students. You want to keep them, you want them to feel stable and make them feel like they're with their teacher in the classroom. So it's best to stay professional and keep them focused in your videos.
If you're pre-recording as well, I think a good tip, and you could tell me if you agree, if you're pre-recording, would it be possible to just get dressed up on a particular day and maybe do a host of sessions for that day? And then you don't necessarily, if you don't want to get dressed up all the other days, in that not necessary. If you're not doing obviously online teaching now and you're just pre-recording it, you could obviously do a video per day and upload it.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the time I would video the day before and send that video the next morning. This also helps you be better prepared. You may want to prepare all your lessons on the weekend and send those through on a daily basis. Whatever works for you. Some teachers have more time to be able to create a video every single day. Some would need to plan around their family, plan around their kids, and would have to set aside one day where they are, you know, if they have to change clothing so it looks like a different day, then that's what they'll have to do. But that's, you know, that's the joys of being able to pre-record your lessons or messages.
Definitely.
So our next step, I already jumped straight to it, was to know your tools. There are tons and tons of online teaching tools that you can use through this online process, but you need to make sure that you do your research and find the ones that will work for you. I mean, if you are looking for ones that use low data or ones that, you know, will be that suits your phone or your laptop or any device, you would need to you'd need to do that research. And also make sure you familiarize yourself before starting. Trust me, this will save a lot of time. If you are not familiar with the tools, you're going to land up having to cut and redo, and this can be very time consuming.
When we're looking at the South African context, I think mostly when we look at the rural and under-resourced schools or areas, we're looking at most of the schools that maybe don't have access to online teaching tools. They obviously, most teachers have smartphones. What are some of the things that we could actually use on a smartphone that could assist us for video and audio?
Well, the first thing is your videoing app. You could create your own videos and send it through either WhatsApp if that's an option. You could send voice notes as well. I do know that a lot of smartphones have a screen recording option. So you could create, you know, slides or pictures on your actual phone and screen record that to be able to send it to your students as well.
We'll also be focusing later on in a webinar with Matthew Barnwell in how to actually compress audio and voice notes to a smaller data usage. And I think that could be a great tip for those of you who are watching. That would be webinar 3 in phase 1. Fantastic.
Well, then that leads me to when you are actually recording your video. Here are a couple of tips to help you for when you start. Be prepared. By this, I mean, try to have a script. It's when you're recording, even though you have no audience in front of you at that moment, it is still like presenting to a big crowd of students. The reason why you would need to write a script is to avoid having to cut, retake. In the beginning, it took me sometimes a day to complete my videos or messages, and it started getting so much easier once I wrote down the steps that I needed to go through, or even just notes so that I could just pick it up in a nice order. Another point is to speak clearly and to the point. You obviously don't want to be sending 20-minute, 30-minute long videos. The shorter, the better, especially if we're looking at low data. And this would also where your script will come in. You need to be able to speak straight to the point, and obviously remembering that in a classroom, students are they have the opportunity to ask you questions if they were unclear about something or if they misunderstood something. When you're doing a video, you're not going to have that opportunity. So you need to make sure that whether it's instructions or whether it's you teaching, it needs to be clear. Another point, which was a challenge that I have now overcome and really realized that using simple language is key. in your classroom, we often have students who struggle with language, and you need to be catering for all of the students. So that means you need to be speaking with language that even your students who aren't going to understand English or whichever language you're going to be speaking very well, you must break up what you're saying so that it's suited for them as well.
Yeah, I think chunking information is key to break it down, especially in the South African context, because we have so many second language learners when it comes to English, if you are recording in English. So that is a great tip for the South African context, as well as speaking clearly and to the point. We only have a short amount of time, as you say, and so creating a script or putting down key points really does direct your attention. As I've done online recordings now for my lecturing, and I found that I would possibly spend nearly half a day doing a recording for 20 minutes, but with a script, it lessens the time completely. So it's definitely a great tip to use. Thanks, Nicole.
For sure. One thing I'd like to say with recording as well, and what I haven't mentioned, is that a lot of us use Instagram, a lot of us use Snapchat, and they have amazing filters or ways you can edit your videos. And they also have a limited time. They've got limited time. So I know on Snapchat, because I've done it a few times, the video only lasts for 1 minute. So it already restricts you from going longer than what you should. And the reason why I'm mentioning those platforms is only because, to make it more fun, instead of the students looking at just a plain boring background, I'll add some words or I'll add a question at the bottom just to help them out. So Snapchat or Instagram applications is also quite fun to use when you are doing videoing and can keep you to a limited amount of time.
I think that's a great tip, because engaging our students through either video or audio is going to be key as a teacher.
For sure. And on that note, you need to be flexible. This whole process is very new for many of us, and things are going to change, and they are going to change very quickly. Not only with what needs to happen, but also applications are changing all the time. So you need to be open to all possibilities at all times.
I think this is the one area for people who are going into the uncharted territory of remote teaching and learning, is a difficult thing to be flexible, because when you don't know something, it's almost like taking a risk. But for somebody that's been using it, the minute you plunge yourself or push yourself, thrust yourself into it, the quicker you learn, and the more you play or engage with something, you adapt and you get a challenge, you move on, you build past that, and you ultimately even able to teach others, as you are doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the best advice I could give is to have an open mind. We as teachers expect students to be learning and to be taking responsibility for their own learning. And as teachers, we need to do that, especially in this, unknown time. We need to be open to new things and to new ideas. The world's always changing, and we need to be able to adapt and change with it.
So, Nicole, is there any last-minute tips or nuggets that you have to share with any of our educators viewing us?
You know what, Shimon, all I can say is that it has been a very fun experience for me. It's been very different. I do miss being in the classroom, and yeah, it is going to take a little bit more work in the beginning. But there are ways, once you become aware of what's out there and how you can really overcome this challenge, it does become easier. And at the end of the day, you're here for the students. You know, keep them in mind when you are doing all of this. It gets very overwhelming, and you can sometimes forget the real reason why you are actually doing this.
I think that is so great. I think keeping your objective of the learner in mind at this time is going to be key for us to surge ahead. We want to thank you, Nicole, for taking the time out to join us for today. We've learned so much and become so much more knowledgeable in how to do video and audio remote teaching. We want to encourage you that are viewing at this time to please join us on our next session, where we will be looking at creating resources in an economical way in the South African context. Thank you. Goodbye.